Elohim, Abraham, Elohim, Yitzhak, Elohim, Yaakov.
Blessed be the name of Jehovah, our Lord and our God. Yeah, thank you so much. Your humble host here, ben-Emmett, with another exciting edition of Torah Watchman Show. Only available for YouTube subscribers. Again, a brief reminder, if you don't have a Gmail account, you may have Yahoo or something else with a Verizon, AT&T, or whatever. But Gmail is free, considered as a contingency account. But with that, you can actually subscribe to me and get notifications. You can also help me to grow my listening audience. So the more people I have subscribed to me, the greater I can grow my company. Yes, I have an LLC, and I'm working very hard with the state of Maryland and federal government to transform my LLC to a non-for-profit, and this is solely in existence, not for branding me per se. You know, I am a public figure. I have been appointed a rabbi of Bethesda Synagogue in Uganda. You heard about Rabbis Without Borders and that kind of thing. But, you know, and more importantly, I want to be a single source so you can come to me and get a tax deduction for giving charitable contributions around the world, namely in India and Uganda, the two target zones there for impoverished people that don't have anything. You think about Jews without any funds at all for kiddush meals. You know, we take so much for granted in America, don't we? Anyway, I hope everyone's been well. I've missed you since last time. We have another parashat. This time, this parashat is known as Eikev, and essentially means because. Yeah, you think about circumstance or cause and effect. So this is happening to you, whether positive or negative, because of your choices were positive and negative. It took you down a rabbit's hole, or took you over a mountain into a wonderful, beautiful grassy meadow with a rainbow in the background. Yeah. But anyway, we're in the book of Taveirah. Again, chapter 7, verse 12 through chapter 11, verse 25. Don't let that range there scare you, because I have a summary synopsis of the 7 aliyahs I'm going to read to you, and then I'm going to extrapolate key points there based on the books and research I have done in the due diligence to get ready for this parashat. Again, if you want to look up the word Eikev, you'll find out exactly in Taveirah or Deuteronomy, chapter 7, verse 12. The key word for these parashats usually comes in the very first word, or maybe the third and fourth words, depending on that. And this is very important when you read a Torah scroll, which is ancient Hebrew, no Masoretic text. You look for these key words to not get lost, essentially, when you unroll the scroll. A general overview. Essentially, this is a segue from our previous parashat. We're talking about Moshe in the last days of his life, literally. They say probably his last 6 months of life. Yeah. And, you know, in the last 6 months of life, if you know that you're going to die in 6 months, most of the time, medical authorities put you in a hospice situation. But, you know, Moshe kicked the bucket list, essentially, was not to go and travel the world, was not to think of himself and enriching himself with his own happiness, entertainment, all that stuff. You imagine how most people think if you only have 6 months left to live, you want to see all the things of this beautiful world and see different people in places like this that you never had a chance, right? But, Moshe's gold and fortune and treasure were in the Jewish people of Israel. It really was. So his last will and testament was, again, treating the nation of Israel as his greater Mishpocha and his family. He was mournful and sorrowful because he knew the future. Understand, Moshe was not a rabbi. Rabbinites call him Moshe Rabbeinu, I think at an attempt of respect, but what they do they gratify themselves. They said they are the lawgivers too, just like Moshe was. Listen, yes, Moshe was a teacher of the Torah, but he was a single data source of the Torah in that only Elohim, is God, worked through him exclusively to get the 5 books of Torah written and codified, and so it could be distributed out freely to all the Jewish people. This is our treasure, folks. I wanted to emphasize before I get started, the Torah is our treasure. It's given to us as a holy gift. We don't deserve the Torah. It's not based on our merits. What is it based on? The promises that Elohim Yehovah made to the patriarchs and matriarchs of blessed memory. It really is. It really is. There's no hubris here. There's no hubris in Moshe. He could have just really been very egotistical and very demanding and everything else, but he's very self-sacrificing and the humblest person in life. Okay? So again, in the brief synopsis, there's a lot of things. There's halakha and things that we learn from this, like grace after meals. We say Shema twice a day. And Quran, for instance, we don't pray 3 times a day, right? Well, why? Because in the Torah, it does not teach us to pray 3 times a day. That was a tradition later with the prophet Daniel in Babylonia. He prayed 3 times a day based on his custom and his own tradition, because the things were completely different in his life, being a captive exile in Babylonia. But we're talking about the 2 major prayers we say begin always with the Shema, and it always ends with the Shema. So that's what we're talking about. In the first Aliyah, we're standing up, going to the Bima, and we get to hold the Torah in our hands. We say a special baroka for that, and then we have a chance to read from the Torah, or we have a chance to just say a blessing over the Torah. It's different in every shul in the world. Ashkenazis, Sephardim, Chabadniks, Rabbinites, and of course Karate Judaism, which is my favorite. They have their own unique customs, mainly from what they inherited and learned generationally from Egypt, believe it or not. Okay? So the Israelites were very anxious because, just like getting ready for LSAT, the really, really hard test that you have to take to become a lawyer. But this essentially, it was cram time. You're getting ready for that, your graduate degree. You make it or break it if you don't pass that last exam or a master thesis or whatever. This is essentially the stressful time that every Israelite of every man, woman, and child was going through. They had young and old there too. And they have all the animals and all the things that they had salvaged and from other nations, things of that nature, and they did not know what their destiny was. Their sole source of faith was, strange enough, was not Elohim. It was Moshe, his servant. And this is the major reason why God said, okay, Moshe, you've performed your service admirably, and I'm going to call you home very soon. I called your brother home. I called your sister home. It is not your purpose and destiny to go over into the land of Canaan, the promised land that I promised you, even Abraham in his time, because, they will look toward you continually as a helicopter parent, essentially. That is my opinion. But I feel emotional to these things when I read this. I'm actually a little bit sad because, we have to kiss Moshe goodbye, literally in a Davarim, when he dies, to welcome him back in Bereshit when we start over the Torah cycle, all over again. But when you're a Zerba Jew and you're exposed to this all your life long, and Moshe was my number one hero growing up as a child. Even as a Baal Teshuva Jew, I was always close to Moshe, um, emotionally and spiritually. So beyond that point, we're talking about the Canaanite nations. You think about Jericho. That was one of the first cities that fell to the Israelite people, namely because Joshua, his leadership there after Moshe had passed and after Elohim had committed the Jewish people's time to go over the Jordan River and go west into the Promised Land. Also, God relayed to Moshe, Elohim relayed to Moshe that when you go over, the Canaanites have a single source and will to destroy you. You must go there expecting to fight for your lives and destroy them utterly, leave no survivors. These people were utterly evil. They were evil in the time of Abraham. You remember the 5 great cities that encircled the Dead Sea, where the Dead Sea is today. You remember the overthrow of Sodom and Gomorrah. Well, sometimes God allows sin to reach critical mass before he judges. Well, this is judgment time for the Canaanite nations. It was a time for blessings, for Baruch, for the Jewish people. Why? Not because of their merits. They fell miserably with the golden calf and other areas there, and the plagues and everything else, and their doubt, the Korach rebellion, etc., etc. But only because Elohim, bless his holy name, is faithful to his covenants and his promises, right? Maybe I'll say amen. Okay? So there was a brief description. Moshe details the wonders of the Promised Land. You hear about a land flowing in milk and honey. Literally, everything was bigger. In some countries, south of the equator, what you grow up north is not so warm, like squash and things, are smaller than you go down south. It's maybe a more fertile land or more water or whatever, sunlight, heat. Everything was bigger in Canaan, including the people. They were giants. But the enormous grapevines that grew there, for instance, dates and figs and other things like that, pomegranates were just unbelievable true, too incredible to believe. You've seen farmers markets. Well, this is creme of the creme. It's the best farmers market you could go to. Well, they had samples of this, and their memory was still there. But 40 years ago, their ancestors related to their children, the wilderness, the wandering, all that. They remember when the 12 tribes went over, they brought samples of all that wonderful produce that was in the Promised Land. We also learn here that the idols of the land are cursed. And in fact, the land that they interact with is cursed. Canaanites were involved in necromancy. They were involved in communication with the dead and evil spirits and things of that nature. Elohim absolutely forbid them to deal with that. You remember Balaam, the false prophet, pure Baal, and other false gods of the lands there. The idols there have to be utterly destroyed and not touched. You can't even say the name of the gods there. Okay. Second Aliyah, Moshe admonishes the Israelites to their newfound fortune when they will find their lot in the Promised Land. So again, it's easier to be humble when you don't have much money in your bank account. When you have lots of money in your bank account, you got that big raise from your employer, and you settled all your debts, you think about, look at me, look what I've done. You buy yourself the very best clothes, very best cars. You go on these wild, expensive vacations and things of this nature. Don't let it go to your head. Keep your heart humbled. That's very difficult in the human condition there. Then think about Job. Think about Job, the patriarch lived in post flood times. We talked about him before. Okay, we read through the book of Job in the previous holiday we had. Where we're mourning the destruction of the first and second temple. Well, think about, Job had everything and then he lost everything, but he still had the faith. We need to control that human nature of envy, the human nature of jealousy for our neighbor, what they have, and also just hubris and just egotistical. Men have problems more of that than women, as far as pride and everything else. So, also, the main thing is that the Jews are admonished to never, ever forget, Zachor, to never forget who gave you the gifts in the first place. Where does the manna come from? Where did the quail come from? If you conquer a nation state and defeat their people and then take over the cities and collect all their gold and cattle and everything else, as not from your hands, as by the Spirit of Elohim, that these great and miraculous things, is by the combat commander of Elohim, the archangels, Gabriel and Michael fighting for Israel. It's not by the might of our hand, it's by the Spirit of Elohim. We all say amen to that. The third aliyah, Moshe tells the Israelites that they will inherit the land of Israel, not due out of their merits. They could never, ever do anything of themselves to merit that kind of favor, to be able to take over someone else's land and be able to defeat them, without being killed yourself. Don't think for a moment, okay, folks, Israelites are referred to by the United Nations today, I'll make a short point here, as occupiers of Eretz Israel. The Jews are occupiers of Eretz Israel. Even the Weather Channel, AccuWeather, does not say Jerusalem of Israel. They say Jerusalem, or they say Jerusalem of Palestine, and all these other things here. They refer to us as the occupiers. No, we just came home. The land was promised to the Jewish people, even if you're Muslim, it's exclusively spelled out in the Quran that the land of Israel would belong to the Yehudim, to the Jewish people. It really does. Only the radicals say they don't. Only the radicals say that we're occupiers. The word Moshe is mentioned predominantly in the Quran more than the Holy Prophet of Muhammad, incidentally. So that's a very important point. You could literally say that we have been in the land. Abraham was in Canaan, and Sarah and Ishmael and Isaac and his children, Eleazar and the others in his tribe and clan during that time for 4,000 years. Okay, that land was promised. That land deed was initially given to Abraham, and then was ratified later through the sons of Yaakov, the 12 tribes, and of course Moshe as well. Okay, so that's what I'm talking about. Don't get fat and happy on what you have, and don't forget the giver of all good gifts is above and not below. Just consider that. Okay, so Elohim, while in the desert, was placing special emphasis on the sin of the golden calf. So throughout their ordeal in 40 years of wandering in the wilderness of sin, as they called it, essentially going around Mount Horeb, Mount Sinai, going round and about because they weren't allowed to go to the land, to the promised land at that time. So, it was literally, the wilderness there was a place to sin. And they were admonished for that. And the golden calf, destroyed the singular opportunity for the golden age of Israel. Could have happened the first submission of the tablets, but it took another pair of tablets for Yom Kippur, for true redemption to set in. But still, there were judgments and admonishments there too. And the the elder generation of Jews paid with their lives in a period of 40 years of wandering. Okay, so remember how close that the Jewish people came to annihilation when Moshe came down from Mount Sinai, saw the golden calf. Even Aaron was weak and gave in to the people. They said that the Levites were the only tribe there that was not directly involved in this. Elohim had every reason to be angry at the Jewish people because they swore before Moshe went up to the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights. They signed a covenant agreement. You will be our Elohim. You'll be Jehovah God to us. But they broke that promise. And Elohim was abundantly clear what would happen if that promise was broken. But Moshe rose to the occasion, not thinking about himself, and acting pretty much as a prototype for the Mashiach. At least that's my opinion. He was standing in the way of Elohim's righteous anger and indignation against the Jewish people shortly after the golden calf incident, okay? The remainder about how the tablets had to be given twice. The first set of tablets were destroyed. The fifth aliyah, Moshe charges Israelites to love and fear Elohim and serve him. He expounds that Elohim's greatness and impresses upon the Israelites their great fortune that Elohim has chosen them out of all the Goim nations. Remember, Israel literally were Goim. Okay, that's where the word comes from. It's as it was referred to us when we were just Hebrews, until we encountered Jehovah on Mount Sinai and received his word, received the covenantal promise that were considered as Yehudim, as Jewish people and the nation of Israel. Okay? So there's a distinct honor. Just like I told you, the Torah is a wonderful, beautiful treasure and blessing that the King of the universe has entrusted us with it. Not to put it on a bushel, not to lock it away in an ark and somewhere in the synagogue, but take all those wise words with us in daily living and transform that in our behavior, in the output statement, in our personal witness to others that have never heard of those promises revealed. They think that it's just religion, but it's not. It's actually divine truth, divine emet. So also, is it a treasure to be chosen by Elohim? We have a task. What is our task? Yeah, our task is to learn the Torah, of course. Our task is to teach the Torah to our children and our children's children. Namely, the task of a king. And King Hezekiah, I think, was one of the few kings that ever did what the constitution of the Torah, I like to say that, actually mandated. In other words, he created copies of the Torah. He actually taught the Torah to the Jewish people in his time. That's why he's blessed with a very long life, okay? So it's very important here that when we go to synagogue on holy Sabbath services, that we don't walk out empty. What I'm saying is, when we go to be fed in the dinner table, we're gratified with that meal. But when we leave that table, we don't think about the poor anymore, right? Not so much, because we are satisfied. Well, when you go to a Shabbat and you go to the service and hear the Parashat, hear the expositions and the Haftarahs and the prophets and judges and kings that are connection points back to that Torah reading cycle, you should leave also filled, but also ready to deliver. Because we have a mission statement. Take the Torah out to the nations of Gentiles, Logoim, essentially, Goim, the nations of the Gentile nations, to take the light, the Or Goim, to the Gentile people. Be a Torah watchman, be a lighthouse, and to those people that are in utter darkness, essentially. And there's a lot of lost Jews out there that's in utter darkness. How will they know unless they're told? The best way to tell and to teach the Torah is not with your mouth, but with your heart, in charity and kindness and compassion, the same things we expect from Elohim. In the six Aliyah, um, Israel was mainly an agrarian type culture. There's no technology, no real industry other than growing crops and cattle, and sheep, and things of that nature. They were very agrarian, and the holidays and seasons per se were centered around this, in that they were solely dependent on the rains coming at a certain time. You don't want the rain to come when the wheat is ripening in the fields. It needs to dry out, right? It can actually rot. So this is very important for Jews to have faith in this and pray that the rains will come in the proper seasons for harvest. Okay, this is something what's missed in our techo geek kind of world in the 21st century. You know, we may live in sixth floor in a tower like in Tel Aviv. Think it's the Vegas of the Middle East. Those people there are not thinking about growing crops. They don't think about the beauty of planting a seed in your own hands and see it grow. Even in Maryland, and I live in a part of the District of Columbia where you have all the city, all the urbanization. I live just outside of that. I grow crops and vegetables out on my patio in little pots. I do this to teach my daughter that everything that comes forth from the earth requires prayer, a lot of hard work, and sweat. And this is something that's lost in the Jewish people, in my opinion, today, unless you live in a kibbutz in Israel, that you're thinking a lot about yourself and you're not thinking about the needs of other people. You really aren't. And you're certainly not thinking about, I need the rains to come right now when you're living in United Terrace. You know, you really don't. So you really miss out on the true meanings of some of the holidays we have throughout the year, the Hebrew year, because it's based on rain. And literally in the summer, we pray for dew, and in the winter, we thank God for the wind and the rain. You know, that's how it is. And that's something we've forgotten. I just want to make that personal note here. Of course, we talk about the Shema prayer, the benefits of that is that this is universal constant. It should unite Jews and not divide us, whether you're a rabbinate or Qadi Jew or B'nai Noach. It should not matter. The Shema is a unification that we all believe in the same one true monotheistic faith, pure and absolute monotheism, like Muslims, like most of them. We all believe in one true God. We differentiate in prophets that receive that word, like Muhammad versus Moshe. Regardless, one true God. If we can agree that there's one true God over Israel, that's protecting Israel, that's honoring his promises and covenants to Israel, I think everything else will fall in its proper place. Because when we yell out that word, Shema, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one. Our Lord our God is one and only one, Akkad. And that is a wonderful, wonderful prayer. Whether, regardless of your denominational faith or belief or how observant you are, is saying that Shema. I encourage everyone to learn that simple prayer, the most basic of prayer, being thankful to the Eternal Father, to our Tati and our King, right? I love that word. Of course, non-observance will lead to exile, yin and yang. Again, we all want to be blessed. We all want to have gold and sapphires and jewels and everything. We want to have money and shekels in our bank account, right? We all want all these things, but you know, it does not come from our own merit. It's back to that again. Is that I own a house and I pay a mortgage. And you know, I pay a very big price in a month to live in a house that I have. I work very hard to get that house as a veteran. I probably couldn't have the house I have and where I live and the quality of life if I was not a disabled combat veteran. Beyond the point there, that it's only Elohim that put the working kegs in place and pieces of the puzzle together so it could actually come out into a blessing, a good and perfect blessing. Everything good and perfect from above, right? And that's all what I'm saying there. That if you're not observant, you're essentially at a random crapshoot in Vegas. You essentially are. And I hope you don't get snake eyes, all kidding aside. A brief introduction of the equivocations, the different prayers like Chakris and Avrit prayers and morning prayers, Shema, and things of that nature. Also, the importance of putting the name of Jehovah on your doorpost. This is something Karate Jews very distinctly. We don't hide that holy name in a box called a mezuzah. Mezuzah was a device that was invented by rabbinites. The word mezuzah is nowhere found in the Torah or the Tanakh. But, I don't really like to pitch an argument about mezuzah versus having another plaque on your doorpost that says the same thing, except that, it's not, as long as that halakha is not mandated for you. In other words, it's not halakha, Moshe halakha, that everyone has a mezuzah at every doorway of their living spaces, okay? Some people put faith in this as good luck charms. That's their own reason to put up a mezuzah, okay? I actually have a plaque, a bronze plaque, on my door because I couldn't fit it on my door frame, but it's very predominant. I like where I have it, even though some Karate Jews have problems where I placed it. But everyone that comes to my house knows I am very bold and very proud of the name of Jehovah God. I don't say Hashem. I don't even say the word God in my family. I tell my wife to say Elohim instead of God. Speak Hebrew. Don't use these false names of Jehovah or Yahweh. Don't use those false names there. Why do we not have a problem saying the word Mashiach? How do you know you're saying the word Mashiach correctly? What would happen if you mispronounce Mashiach inadvertently, accidentally? Would you lose those reins? Would you have admonishments and judgment upon you? Would God curse you? Would Elohim curse you if you accidentally mispronounce his holy name? Don't take the name of Jehovah, your Elohim, in vain through your life action. Don't be hypocritical. Don't be one way to someone else and another way to another person. Don't be hypocritical. And that's all the warning I want to give you there. The holy name of Elohim, is something that we should cherish in our hearts and souls. We should not take advantage of it. We should not use it, trying to say tactical overreach on someone else. We should not misuse that, but we should live it in our lives. Listen, Jehovah wants to be our God. He wants to be our Abba Father. He demands to be our King, and we should give him that tribute by saying his name proudly, like the Moabite woman Ruth did very clearly when she told Naomi, I want to be part of your people forever, and your Jehovah is my Jehovah. She's literally said that in the Hebrew. Read it in the book of Ruth. Okay, wrapping this up. Okay, Sefer Aliyah, Moshe informs the Israelites that if and only if they follow all of Elohim's ways and cleave to him. Cleave is like you hold on to something very tight. Think about your child. You cleave to your Abba or your Emma very tightly because you trust them. They're like a security blanket to you. They're strong and powerful than you. And you cleave to them, especially when you have a lightning storm or you're afraid or something. This is how we should cleave to Elohim as well. I mean, listen, Elohim he will never complain about being a helicopter parent to you. He will complain when you're not cleaving to him. If you cleave to him, you're not sinning. And you're thinking more about glorifying his name and everything you do than glorifying yourself and your own hubris, especially for a man. And we usually have more problems than that than our frum ways, unfortunately. But this wraps it up. Is that, again, a final goodwill message to the Jewish people. You will occupy this land. And you will occupy this land miraculously in ways that you cannot imagine. And you will be telling the stories as legend to your children and children's children for all time. That's why I'm telling this story now. That's why it's so real to me. When I read the Torah, I have vivid images in my brain, and I try to make that real to my daughter. I try to make that real to my wife. And excitement, we should be excited. Thank God, thank Elohim for choosing me to be a Jew, essentially. I don't curse the Gentiles for not being Jewish. We need all three sons of Noah. We need the generations of Japheth. We need generations of Ham. Of course, we need a generations of Shem that we're directly descendants from. We need more Nohides on the planet, not less. We need more friends and less enemies. We certainly should not be enemies to our fellow Jew. You hear about Lashon Hara, and you hear about bearing false witness and all of this stuff. It's so easy to nitpick at people. Someone may not like this yarmulke. Someone may not like my peyot. It said peyot is not discussed. And the Tanakh, it actually is in Ezekiel. He talks about that, about you're to pull your heads. Don't shave your heads bald if you can help it. And do not cut the length of your locks. It actually says that. Okay, there's a lot of implication in that. I'm all kidding, okay? Listen, Rabbi ben-Emmett signing out. I just want to leave you with Ezekiel chapter 18, verses 20 through 23. This is a salvation plan to both Jews and Gentiles. It really is. No matter how you feel about your life, you may personify ill will against yourself, self-hatred, because the way your father treated you. Listen, don't compare Tati, our king, our Melech, our king, with a bad parent. Just don't do that. And we typically do that. And we reject the one that breathed our nefesh within us, our souls in our life, because of the way we feel about ourselves and growing up. Don't do that. The salvation plan, you give the DACA, you make amends to all the people you've wronged, and be sincerely repentant in all your ways. It's that simple. And then Zechariah chapter 8, verse 23 also talks about the time of Mashiach, when all things are be accounted for, and when all the Emmett truth is given by Elohim to all the nations of the planet. That is going to be a turning point for all people to make a choice. Do you choose the God of Moshe, the God of the Jewish people, or you choose something else? Where during that time, 10 people, as a representation to that prophet there in the last days, will leave their religious denomination behind for the first Jew they can find, and they say, take me to the temple. Teach me the Torah. Listen, don't wait until that day to teach the Torah to someone that's hungry and thirsty for that knowledge and that blessed treasure that we've been chosen to invest not only in ourselves, but other people. Take care, and God bless you.